Yeah, and yeah, specifically in the lease purchase model, it's been 350 now in the last 2 years, and it
Mm.
gets easier when you get to that volume because when you're doing right by people, they tell friends, and then it's
Yeah. And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring Podcast. Today we've got Jim Manning here with us. He's the founder of 3Doors. Now, I brought a lot of people talking about real estate. We've talked a lot about multifamily. We've talked a lot about syndication. We've talked a lot about funds, but we never talked about a fund that focuses on single family. And furthermore, single family dealing with lease purchases. So this is going to be something totally different, which I'm really excited about, because when we first started chatting, we're like, okay, another conversation around syndication. Cool. There's a lot of people out there and they all have great perspectives. But this seems to me to be fairly unique. I don't know many people are doing what you're doing there, Jim.
That's right. Yeah, we've kind of stumbled upon something that's been working really well for us, and I don't know many people that are stubborn enough to take over a decade and a half to do the volume that it takes in residential real estate to have a fund even make sense, right? And yeah, we've been up in our heyday in 2017 as far as property flips go. We bought and sold over 300 houses in that year alone, and so we really built up a flipping company is where we started, and then we transitioned that over into a fund structure where we're buying and holding on to lease purchase deals over the last. I started working on that around 2018, something like that. Yeah.
Now, lease purchases for people in Canada, we would understand that to be the term called a rent to own, or an RTO. And you talked about the term of lease purchases versus RTO. And I know RTOs get a little bit of a stigma in Canada and the way that they've been done. I think you guys do it from a completely different perspective. And talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't. So here's the deal, guys. Like if two adults enter into a legally binding contract and both parties understand the terms, I don't necessarily have a problem with whatever those two parties agree to, right?
Yep.
So, for example, a lease purchase agreement. I'm just going to use lease purchase agreement, or I'm just going to say lease purchase, but rent to own, they're kind of in the same family. There's nuances and differences, but it doesn't matter for the purpose of this show. But um, on the lease purchase side, if I have someone say, hey, if I have an investor go to a tenant and say, hey, if you want to buy the home, give me $20,000 before you move in. You have 18 months to execute on the lease purchase contract. If you don't, I'm going to kick you out of the property. If you go into that and both parties understand that agreement, like that's okay in my book. But where it becomes predatorial is if someone says, hey, okay, this contract's $20,000 to enter into my lease purchase agreement. You have 18 months to execute. And I, as the professional, know that the consumer has a 0% chance to execute based on where their credit's at and where their personal situation is. I think that can be predatorial. And where the structure gets into some ickiness is when you have investors trying to take advantage and capture that down payment money, and then knowing full well they're not going to be able to execute on the deal, and then turning around and saying, okay, I'm going to kick them out in 18 months. I'm going to find the next person to give me another 20 grand, and I'm going to rinse and repeat and just churn through people every year and a half, or whatever the length of the lease purchase agreement is that you give them. That's where it can get kind of sticky and a little bit icky, if you know what I mean.
But the sticky and icky doesn't just exist in that environment. Look at real estate agents and mortgage brokers when they're putting people into properties that don't necessarily fit their budget. There's this whole thing called suitability. And then when you're doing mortgages that are private mortgages, there's this thing that's called an exit plan, because it's great to give them the money, but then you got to get that money back because it's only supposed to be for a short period of time. It's called bridge financing. And a bridge means there's something on this side and there's something on this side. So there's something on both sides supporting a decision. And so you got to have that entrance. What's the plan to get in? And most importantly, you got to have the exit. What would that plan, what it is to get out of it? And so the idea is if somebody's going in and very clearly spelling out, here's what we understand that exit to be. And everybody's all knowing, parties knowing, look, you've got to make more in your job, or you've got to save up another $20,000, or you've got to just do the right thing. And if they show up at the end of it and they've got a new sports car and maybe bought a little RV, and they're like, I don't have the money. I can't believe you duped me into this deal. That's something where they've let down their part of the deal.
Yeah, and that's different than going into that deal as the professional knowing, hey, even if everything goes right for this person, they're not going to be able to execute on it at the end of it, right?
Yep.
And I believe personally that as the professional, it's on us to do the right thing and to hold ourselves to a higher standard than just chasing money.
Absolutely.
Personally, that's what we believe in, and
well, you could almost say you're actually chasing money in doing the right thing because it's going to produce better outcomes. And by producing better outcomes, it's going to be easier to find people to do business with because you have a history of success, a track record of success. You're actually chasing better money by doing the right thing.
Yeah, I was listening one time to like a scam artist guy that, oh my gosh, I wish I knew all the details, but he had like a whole call center of 40 people and they had screens up and all this technology and all this hacking going on. And I remember thinking like, my goodness, that guy is such a hustler. If he just realized that he's being a business owner, and if he just like played within the rules, like he would make a fortune. He'd be, rather than getting thrown in jail, he'd be making 100-fold of what he's making with this scheme, right? But that's
a lot of schemers.
Right.
You're 100% right. Schemers are business people. They're just business people who operate outside of the moral compass or the ethos that the rest of the world exists.
Yeah.
And they still have to hire people. They still have to close. They still have to maintain a profit margin. The only thing they're missing is morality, and that's probably the one thing they desperately need. And
that's right. Yeah, and it can be harder to keep that going than just a business where you're trying to help people.
because you're going to attract the like people,
right?
Yeah. You're gonna see. The thing is, I think every time you do something dubious, you attract somebody who's dubious. And then you wonder how, like, I always say this in the mortgage space. We run a mortgage brokerage in Canada. I always say, if you're going to do fraud, guess what's going to show up in your desk every day? You do it once, another fraud deal will show up because everybody's going to know. And all the fraudsters are now going to start reaching out to you. So the first time you do fraud, guess what's going to happen? Now you have a whole desk of fraud. You are the fraud guy.
That's
so don't do fraud. Right. And the same thing applies in your space is that, you couldn't do what you've done in building the ecosystem of success if you didn't build a business of success, because you'd be called out by some sort of jurisdiction. You'd be called out in the news because, a lot of these things, that's how it happens. And to do the number of deals that you've done with the organization, I think it was about 3,500 or so, I think you said.
Yeah. And specifically in the lease purchase model, it's been 350 now in the last 2 years. And it gets easier when you get to that volume because when you're doing right by people, they tell friends, and then it
gives them an opportunity. Let's talk about an opportunity that kind of came up on the plate a little while ago that for one of my clients. You want to chat about that one for a little bit?
Let's do it.
This is a real estate deal that happened in Canada. And so this is a deal where the client is a business owner and he's actually using the rent to own model as a tool for him to attract great talent into his business, because there's a lot of people who are out there that, they need to move in order to get into where they need to work. And he's got a business that's just dying for people. And there's a lot of great people working in jobs that they're just going nowhere. So he's providing huge opportunity. But for them to make a big change, they have to make a big change. And so he says, no problem. I'll buy you a house. And when you're ready, you can buy it back. And it follows that same sort of lease purchase agreement, but it's used as a tool to be able to build employee satisfaction and to be able to recruit people in your organization. And that to me is a hugely noble task and a very smart businessman.
Absolutely. Anything we can do to help stand out from the crowd is an amazing thing, right? And that's really like we talk about, and we're talking about money, we're talking about mindset and mentoring, and like Steve, what a brain, by the way. I get all of y'all listening to this guy. Like, it's been fantastic getting to know you, even though you're a newer acquaintance here. But when I talk about it, there's been times in my career where I was in groove with and in sync with what the market was doing. And when you're in sync as an entrepreneur, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. And then there's been other times where I've been out of sync with what the market was doing, and it was like pulling teeth to make a profit. And like an example of that, like in real estate investing, is there's a concept called market of the moment. Have you ever heard, Steve, has anyone ever talked to you about that before?
No, I'd love to learn a little bit more about this.
Okay, so in 2006, when I started, the market was turning and we had a historic real estate shift. And the market of that moment was called short sales. And what a short sale is, for those of you that are newer to the investing world, is if a property's worth $200,000, but the loan on it's $300,000, as the investor, you talk to the bank on behalf of the homeowner and you say, "Hey, let me buy this house for $200,000 because it's only worth $200 now. Will you agree to sell the property short of the loan amount?" So when we started out, we were doing a bunch of those. And then as the market turned and shifted, and there's historic levels of equity right now, there's not many short sale deals out there. So what was a market of the moment and was like shooting fish in a barrel to do these deals has now is the exact opposite of that. So the exact same strategy in a different environment now becomes a lot more difficult to do. And I have a friend that does short sales still. And he said the only short sale deals that he gets now are these crazy ones that are so off the wall that they're incredibly challenging to pull off. And so, as entrepreneurs, it's like what I have learned is like not all opportunities are created equally. Like in the case of lease purchases, we take on far less risk than we did when we were flipping properties, and we're making a crazy amount more money than what we did when we were flipping properties. And a lot of times we think, oh, well, higher returns equals higher risk. Well, not all strategies are like that. there's some that you can really hit a nerve on and explode on. And we've been fortunate with this one to have found what in our market has been a market of the moment. I can't speak for across the nation, but I certainly can speak for St. Louis.
And most of the deals you're doing are within the St. Louis area, is that correct? Or?
Yeah, St. Louis, Missouri, and the metropolitan area. We have some in Illinois as well. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, I love what you talk about when you talk about being sort of in sync, so with the market and sort of in tune. And when you're running at that sort of same resonation, sort of the same sine curve almost, really, you're kind of feeling that everything's going easy, right? And I can think back to certain times in the business where that feels that way. And I can also feel where your sine curve gets a little bit out of it and you start bumping into the opposite. It's kind of, you're feeling not in sync. You're feeling everything's getting more difficult. Right now, what you look at where in the market right now, you talked about the short sales being something that was, you had a rhythm for it. What is the rhythm now for you? What is the way that you're looking for business at this point?
Yeah, I mean, the rhythm now, so what's going on in single family real estate is there's a lot of hedge funds, real estate funds that are trying to buy up as much as they possibly can. And the reason why is because it's a common sense investment right now. We're in a housing crisis. And NAR, National Association of Realtors, did a study that we're 5.5 million houses short over that should have been built to keep up with demand that weren't over the last decade. And then when we have, we were talking about demographics earlier before we hit the record button, but millennials are a bigger demographic than baby boomers. Okay. And then also Gen Zs are barely smaller than millennials. Okay. And I grew up with baby boomers as parents, and they would tell me, they would make little passing comments all the time, like, man, the baby boomer generation was so big. It created so much wealth for so many people because of the amount of people that influxed into the market. The difference, though, was that the baby boomers was followed by much smaller demographics. Whereas right now we have Gen Zs and millennials that are two big demographics stacked up next to each other, and they're all entering into the housing market and increasing demand on the housing market because these are people that are getting married, they're starting families, so on and so forth. So that's area one, that there's a massive demand for housing that's increasing right now. Then the other interesting thing is that we're also in a labor crisis. Oh my gosh, why am I blanking on this? Don't quote me on this, guys. I believe it's 1 in 4 construction workers are over the age of 55 right now, and they're going to be exiting and retiring. So not only are we 5.5 million houses short, we also have a labor crisis on who's going to build these properties, and so when you stack those two together, to me, it's a very common sense investment. Let's just buy and hold on to as much as we possibly can right now in this environment. And I want to preface this with my opinion is very biased on what's going on in my market too, St. Louis. There are different real estate's a localized thing, guys. There's different pockets that can behave different than what the macro level trends are, right? But so to me, it's it makes sense. It's just we're going to just buy and hold on to everything we possibly can, and in our case with the lease purchase deals, we typically get more cash flow than what a normal landlord gets, and we have less overhead. So so it's been a blessing for us. It's been incredible.
Well, I think the buy and hold strategy has a lot of merit right now when you look at, I don't know, let's look at the average wage that somebody makes today versus the average wage somebody made 5 years ago. Because the inherent cost to feed the person who's building that house has, gone up by, 10x easily. And then the labor has gone up, the material has gone up. And then I think you're right when you look at the scarcity of the labor pool itself. When we look at COVID and these lockdowns and these people they were in the trades and they had kids, they had to go off to work, but their kids had to stay home and they couldn't send them to school because school operated like a quasi daycare because at least you could get the kids out so you could go to work. But when that couldn't happen, the education was happening in the home and they couldn't send them out. They started to realize some of the deficits they had in that lifestyle and some of the risks they had. And there was a lot of people who pivoted out of that space and got into the virtual space or a completely, different industry. And then when you look at the Gen Zs coming in and they're living in a very digitized space and they have a very digitized perspective, they don't connect it to the analog world. And so the idea of going out and getting their hands dirty and smacking a hammer or, hitting a drill or any of these things, it just is not congruent with the core values of the way that they believe. So the amount of influx that happening in that space is very low. So the idea that we're 5 million short, I think we're going to be a heck of a lot more.
Yeah. And then, so Harvard did a study on this about Gen Zs and millennials. And there's another 20 million houses that need to get built to keep up with demand. That's to keep this market the same of where it's at through 2038. And so it's, I had a local builder here that I'm friends with, Gary's his name. I asked Gary, I said, hey, how are you doing on the new build front? And he said, well, I've been doing this for 40 years. We have 500 employees. We have demand for 1,000 employees without even thinking twice. And I can't find a 501st person to hire.
Wow.
Yeah. So, when we get into the market of the moment and like shooting fish in the barrel for us, it's been, well, we have this macro environment that's favoring holding on to real estate. And then we have this higher returns and lower risk than what a lot of the other strategies that we've done. We kind of couple those together, and it's just, we've been growing like crazy. It's been a true blessing, and one that I can't take credit for. It's just been a fortunate thing.
Yeah, I think with the building side of things, we're seeing a migration in certain areas. Obviously, I think where you are, it's going to be a little bit more difficult given the seasonality. But down south, we're seeing a lot of 3D printers showing up to print the houses, to take out some of the labor from that perspective. And a buddy of mine just bought one, and watching the pictures of it just printing, we've got a 3D printer here, and it's just exciting to see it at that scale to be able to print homes. Well, and obviously coming with
and there's going to be like Elon probably would come up with a robot to help with construction at some point, or there's going to, in our lifetimes, there'll be solutions. But you just look like, so I grew up with the computer, like I think they started coming out, the personal one, in like 4th grade. Or even a more recent example, like flat screen TVs when they first came out were like $4,000 back in like 2000 or whatever when they came out, and now you can get them for you can get a 50-inch for what, like $200 or whatever it is. They're crazy inexpensive now, right? And that's the same thing. So even if the technology exists to solve a problem, I mean, we might be talking about 20 years before it gets to a scale to where it can be an actual affordable solution for it to make sense instead of, using the ways that we're currently using, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, and the other thing too is when you're building a property, there's certain things that just have to happen on site. And I can't see how you would print those certain changes that might happen. I mean, site conditions dictate a lot of changes that happen, and the computer to adapt to that, it would be very interesting to see how that happens. And then there's certain assembly that has to happen on site, which will require people as well. So I think the idea that you could 3D print all the wires in a house and all the insulation, well, that would be really cool. I think we definitely are far, far away from that.
Well, yeah, and then you have the legal thing too, like, okay, it hasn't been proven yet. So what happens if the wires get printed wrong and someone dies? Like, I mean, so all of this just takes decades, to flush out and to figure out. And meanwhile, I'm just gonna buy and hold on to some real estate and enjoy the ride.
Absolutely. Well, if you're doing what the big investment houses are doing in buying up real estate, you're sort of following what the big guys are doing in the sense of, buying up as much as possible. And that's what they're doing, and that's what you're doing. You're just sort of on the shoulders of greats and making the same decisions at scale. And I think that is interesting.
Yeah, and they have a lot of data analysts that are looking at the numbers. They're not idiots, they're hiring Harvard grads to like look at all this stuff, right? And what I just shared with you guys was why. I don't think a lot of people have taken the time like I have. I've spent a lot of time researching this to figure out, well, why are they doing it? What are the numbers? What numbers are they seeing? And to just put it in more simple terms, like it's really simple, guys. There's a lot of buyers, not that many houses,
Yeah. Now with the fund, when did you get the fund set up? When did you get that started?
Yeah, so we started it. So we did not have equity partners for the first 15 plus years of doing this. So we were right around. I had a conversation with a family member, and he basically said, "Hey, I'm afraid of running out of money before I die," and that was just an awful feeling. It took my breath away to think about someone that was close to me, that I love, that was in his 70s and in that uncertain standpoint or in that uncertain position. And I asked him, I said, well, what's going on? Because like, I know you guys saved your money. I get that you're not upper class, but upper middle class, like made good money, you're self-made millionaires. Like, what's going on? And he said, well, if I live to be 90, I'm okay. If I live to be 100, I think I'm going to run out of money because I did what the financial industry taught me to do. I saved my money. I put it in index funds and stock market. And right now, with a war looming, inflation's going crazy, and the market's kind of just unsettled. It's in an uncertain spot. Like, I have no idea. And I really want to go to this trip in Europe that my wife and I have been planning for a decade. And I don't think I can afford it. And that just absolutely broke my heart, because it's like, wait, you are, you have a nest egg over $1 million and you're too afraid to go to a trip in Europe. And if we think about it, how we've thought about retirement in many ways is backwards. We don't know how many days we're going to live on this earth, right? And what the financial industry will tell you is like, hey, you need $10 million to have the lifestyle you want, or $5 million in your nest egg. Well, that's great if we knew to the day when we were going to pass away. But we don't know health-wise, like, are we going to have to get into an assisted living situation a decade earlier than we thought we were? Like, we don't have any idea on that. And why do we work, guys? We work because we have monthly expenses and we need income to cover those monthly expenses. And so as I'm thinking through this, I'm like, well, at the time I was 36. I just turned 40. And I was like, well, I've been blessed. I've been a real estate investor since I was 23 years old. And I already own enough real estate that generates me passive income. I don't have this worry, and I'm half the age of this person, and I've so then I started thinking about it. I'm like, okay, well, we have this amazing investment opportunity with what's going on in the market. Um, and we have people like my friend that really shouldn't be a landlord. He doesn't have the professional skills to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I have this team that can kind of do all of it. Well, why not just marry the two and take a bigger percentage of the a bigger percentage of the market than what I can do on my own. So that's why we opened up and started bringing on equity partners, even though we had done over 3,000 deals on our own before that point. Was the market opportunity, and then helping people, like helping provide a good solid investment for someone's net worth, and helping create an opportunity for passive income that actually is passive, not something that sounds passive and feels passive, and then you invest in it and realize, wow, this kind of sucks. I have to I have to be a landlord. Do I need to call what plumber am I going to call, or do I need to go plunge this toilet when the tenant calls me? And
the two greatest words ever used in real estate are passive income and generational wealth. And if you go to a conference, you probably hear those 500 times.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, owning a bunch of duplexes and a bunch of other properties, there's nothing passive about that.
And so here's the caveat, though, is like Steve's 100% right. And there are still ways to do it passively. Like, it's true and it's a lie at the same time. The truth behind what Steve said, or the truth behind passive income, is just because there's work that needs to be done doesn't mean you have to do the work. Yep. Someone else can do the work. And really, how we got our start. And guys, I know it sounds like, oh man, 3,500 deals. He's done all these deals. And for those of you that are just really more on the starting out phase, don't judge yourself based on the big numbers that are happening now. Like, we have a company of over 30 people and all that now. But when I was just starting out, I only did one deal in my first 18 months. So to put that into perspective, many of y'all listening in had a quicker start than I did. But oh my gosh, my ADD is taking over, Steve. Tell me, I had a point.
About, I think when you look at your fund structure, and I think it'll lead into this, is the idea of the active participant and the passive participant.
That's right. So, okay. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you, brother. My brain can move faster than my mouth sometimes, and then I get into these ADD forgetfulness. But so then what we did, and I didn't realize what we were even doing at the time, but what we did was we were doing property flips, and we had individuals lending us money to be able to do the flips. And we were self-funding repair money, and we were just getting 100% of the purchase price. And we were stuck at we started doing one at a time, and then we saved up money and started doing three at a time. But we were stuck. And then finally the light bulb went off, and we said, well, why don't we just ask our private lenders, and why don't we ask these individuals, like, can you just lend us 100% of everything, the fix up and the repairs? Or I'm sorry, the purchase price and the fix-up cost. And we asked our people, and they're like, well, yeah, we've been working with you for 3 years. What do we care? We'll just make more money on lending you more money. And so then that was really how we scaled our company. Instead of being able to do 3 flips at a time, we were only limited by the amount of capital we could raise. And so infinite capital could mean infinite amount of flips, right? And so what I didn't realize at the time was that we had stumbled on the best partnership structure in real estate that I've ever found. And that's real estate partnerships work incredibly well when you have a hustle partner and a money partner. You have one party that says, I have money, I don't have time, you do everything. And at the time, we were just hustle partners. We were able to do all of the work and deliver on what our promised returns were, and it helped us grow. And then over the course of the years, I was like, and I started doing the math on what some of our money partners were making. I'm like, whoa, they made as much money as I did. Oh, they are financially free. They're doing very well with the amount of money they have with us and generating those returns, right? And those structures, because it just gets very clear, right? If you have a hustle partner that can handle all the problems that are going to come up and that you can rely on, then you can just be a real estate investor, but just do it from your couch. Like don't if you've taken the time to earn money, you don't have to do any of the work, and you get all 100% of the benefits of investing without any of the legwork. So yeah, I mean, and that's so then we kind of built it on that, and then here recently in the last couple of years, we decided to bring on equity partners, to help take advantage of the real estate market, and to help continue with that passive income generation, and help people with their retirement.
Yeah, I think when you have very good delineated roles in a relationship, it becomes really easy to work together. When you have that, as you say, the hustle partner, and they know exactly what their job is, and then the money partner knows exactly what their job is. Show up with a check, go home, and go do whatever else you were doing.
Yeah.
And so I think having that as a really strong structure allows each person to see success in what they're doing. It gets really mucky when both parties want to do the same thing or don't want to do the same thing. And so I think you've really fallen into a model of success.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot I've been doing this long enough. I've seen a lot of friends that have partnerships that have failed. And, and the interesting thing is we tend to like and want to work with people that are just like us. And if someone's like you're spitting it, like your twin, they have the same amount of money in the bank, they have the same skill set, they like to do the same things, that is like a terrible business partner, because they're good at the same things. What synergy is there in that, right? Like you actually need someone that it has the exact same values that you do, that you can trust. That should be the same, but then their skill set should be different, and you each bring different things to the table.
Absolutely. There's a great tool. It's a disc that really helps people figure that out, which allows you to look at the four pillars of what makes up a way that somebody makes decisions and acts and relates to the world. And once you can understand those four pillars and know where you sit, you kind of know where your liabilities are and where your assets are. And then if you look around and you surround yourself with people that are different than you, you can really build up some really great inertia, as long as you know how to communicate. Because when we surround ourselves with people that are different than us, they act differently as well. They think differently. So we can't expect them to act in the same way that we do. So then we can also then interface in the way that they want to be interfaced with as well.
That's right.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Now, what does it look like for you if we were going to just shoot out 5 years down the road, 10 years, whatever the lens takes you? What does that look like for you?
What's funny is I'm having so much fun, and we're at the the J curve of growth. Things are really growing. It's hard to know exactly where this thing's going to go. I don't the thing that I hope is that I'm still connected to what I feel like my purpose is, and still trying to help people at the same level. I don't, it's not really like a money thing for me, just because we've been doing this long enough to where, it's really more of an impact thing. I'm trying to help people, help make an impact on people's lives. So whatever I am doing, I hope I feel as called and kind of in line with the purpose of why I'm here, like I am now. So,
well, I always think money is one of those things that if you have a great relationship with, and I know you do, is that money is a lot of times the epicenter of impact. The more money that you have, the more impact you can make. And, if you're out there buying up houses and rehabbing houses and you're buying 100 of them, well, you might be providing jobs for 500 people.
That's right.
You might be providing homes for 3,500 people in good quality neighborhoods. And so your impact is greater the more that you can create from money, because money has no value intrinsic to itself. It's a debt obligation. Well, but the idea that the asset side of it is the impact that it can make. It's the currency of impact.
Yeah, and there's a term that I've been studying here recently about the eternal rate of return, not just the internal rate of return. And it's thinking more about that impact. And so for us, we're taking a part of our funds deal is we're taking a homeless veteran that served our country and or I'm sorry, there's Canadians listening to this. Served the U.S.
It's all good. It's all
and
good.
he and came back and fell on hard times, and life happened. And we said, you know what? You served our country. Restoration House is the name of the charity we're doing this with. They've helped you get back on your feet. You're employed now. Rather than wait 10 years to be a homeowner, we're going to help you go from homeless to homeowner. And this isn't going to be a handout, right? Like we're not going to just give it to you for free. You're going to have to pay for it, but we're going to do it at cost. We're not going to make a profit on this. And we're going to help you hopefully, circumvent and change your next generation and the generations after it, and speed up your family tree by a few generations. And we're so we're looking to make that impact. And when you think about money and the influence it can have, I've never thought about this, but think about like a lot of the great movements, and like a lot of them have started with just a small group of people that have made investments. So Christopher Columbus, right? Can you imagine what would have happened if a different country gave him money? You're talking about the landscape of what he discovered and the languages that are spoken would be completely different. And it started with just a group of investors that said, hey, the world's not square, it's round. What? Okay, yes. Make me some money. Okay, I'll hear some money. Go out and do it, man. But then the influence that small group had with the language and who ended up settling where and everything like that, it all started with a group of investors. And I think we undervalue that and underemphasize what can be done on the impact front. And I mean, that's kind of the evolution as far as an investor goes, and kind of where I'm at. And just trying to really do good by people, and not only make quality internal rate of returns, but help with our eternal rate of return too, and drive an impact for our communities.
And that, I think, is where you're going to create true legacy value. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about the sports car that's in your driveway. It's about the impact that you make in the world. And I think that what you're doing with the hand up, not the hand out, I think that's a beautiful model for success, to be able to integrate, people who need help into the world, into a new future for themselves, and really promote a greater society.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Well, Jim, like when we're looking at reaching out to you, I know you've got the Passive Wealth show that you've got at your podcast, a great show, and looking forward to be on your show. And then you've got the 3doors.com as the ways to reach out to you. So if they're an investor, they reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So so the Passive Wealth show, what it's really about is how do you think as a investor that wants to make a return and not do any of the work? How do you invest into real estate through other people? And if you go to the Passive Wealth show, I have free courses out there. Like, I spent enough time to charge like $5,000 for this course, but I'm calling it Passive Profits. It's available for free on the website if you want to sign up to it. And basically, like, how do you identify different risk profiles, like key person risk, and apartment complexes compared to single family real estate, and what are some of the terms? Like, there's going to be terms like private placement memorandums and things like that if we can sharpen our skill set as a passive investor, that'll be really beneficial. And you can access, and if you want to talk to myself or the team, we're happy to do that too, and be a resource for you. SEC rules and regs, like, we're not. You really need to, on these private investments, you really need to have a relationship with people, before you kind of get into what the returns are and all of that. So, we have some right now at the time of this recording, we have some availability, but we already have 130 partners, and it's been going really well. So we may not, depending on when you're listening to this, we may or may not have something available, but yeah, reach out if you're looking to learn more about passive investing. And if you have a curiosity around the lease purchase deals as well, my business partner, Jason Courtney, if you want to just go to our website and just fill out a web form there saying, hey, I want to learn more about that. I can connect you with Jason, and he's got some information on the lease purchase deals if you want to actively do those as well. We'd be happy to be a resource for you on that front too.
So would real estate agents do a good job in reaching out to you then? Because it'd be great if they're in your neighborhood to find out a little bit more about this.
Yeah, we're here to help. I shared one. So let me end on this, and this is how I think about things. I did one deal in my first 18 months because I had to be my ego. My ego held me back. I had to be the guy that had the answer. I grew up in school thinking, oh, well, it's all about me and me getting that A and filling out the bubbles right on the piece of paper. And when that translated into the real world, I was too afraid to go to a meetup and say, hey, I'm brand new. I don't know what I'm doing. Will somebody help me? Like, because I wanted to go to that meetup, like already knowing Jim Manning's here. I already know what I'm talking about. And I put $1,000 into my first course and I read it. And then I bought another course for another $1,000. And the problem is I was just learning and I wasn't asking people questions. I wasn't actually doing anything. So that by the time I was done with the second course, I had already forgotten all of the first course, right? And I started doing deals when I started reaching out to other people and asking them questions. And I've had a lot of people pull me up along the way. So like on the website, there's an opportunity to just talk to myself or our team. Like we're here to help you. I mean, and kind of pay it forward because of all the people that we've leaned on and relied on along the way. So I'd love to get in a relationship with any of y'all that like the thought of lease purchases or being a passive investor, and let me know. Here to serve. So
that sounds amazing. And I love the idea of what you talk about when learning. You're getting into action, getting into relationships, getting into moving, because that massive action always beats that perfect planning. And certainly a testament with the results that you've had.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Jim, man,
yeah.
It has been an absolute pleasure on the show. Learning a lot about this. I was excited about it because I've not seen this before. You are unique. You are the unicorn. So it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Oh, that's great. Well, have a great one, guys. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, no worries. And guys, this is the money. This is the mindset. This is the mentoring podcast. We'll see you on the next one.